Good day, everyone. Today we are going to still discuss all about measures of relative position. So basically, the last time we end up with calculating for the quantiles, which is gonna be yung percentile natin, yung decile, and then the quartiles. So we're gonna do a little bit of recap today for that certain topics, and then I'm going to continue on the topic where we stopped for measures of relative position. So basically, if I'm going to do a recap for these uh, topic on quantiles, I like to make use of the concept of median. And then, of course, in our previous discussion on measures of central tendency, we know that the median is just actually the center of your data set. So let's say this is our data set, yung ating number line. And then, of course, the center of our number line is going to be probably right here. So if this is going to be the center of our data set, meaning this is going to be our median. And then let's say itong ating number line is the distribution of scores, and that consists of 100% of the scores. So basically, as you can see, if we use the median, it divides the entire distribution into two equal parts, which is from here to here, which is our first portion, and then our second portion is gonna be here. So if we are going to divide 100% into two equal parts, meaning yung first portion natin is just the 50% of the scores, and the other second portion is just 50% of the scores. So basically, ganun din yung concept ng ating other na measures of relative position is specifically for quantiles. If you want to calculate the values on the scale below, which we can find a certain percent of all other scores, we could do that under quantiles, which is yung types of quantiles natin are, if you recall, our number one, yung percentile, wherein yung percentile is that you are going to divide the entire distribution into 100 parts. So meaning each portion is 1%, right? And then for our quartiles, that is dividing the entire distribution into 4 parts, meaning each of the portion is 25% of the distribution of scores. And then for number 3, we also have deciles. Yung deciles naman natin is dividing the entire distribution into 10 parts. So meaning each of the portion is just 10% of the distribution of scores, which is 100%. Okay? So let's try to do a recap on percentile first. So for percentile, I'll let you use this formula wherein yung percentile natin is equal to the number of values below x plus 0.5 divided by the total number of values times 100%. So basically, if you want to find the corresponding percentile rank to a given value x, you have to use this formula. Like for an example, let's say you want to find the percentile rank for a score of 6 on this specific data set, which is itong data set na ginamit natin the last time. And then if you wanna find the percentile rank of 6, you have to use that formula. But of course, you have to make use of to follow the steps first. Wherein for the first step, if the data is disarranged, you have to arrange it first from lowest to highest, or either highest to lowest, or it has to be a ranked list first. So and for this case, we already arranged the data set, which is of this case wherein it is arranged from lowest to highest. Now what we are just going to do the next is just apply the formula we have for finding the percentile rank. So for the percentile rank, that will need this formula, and then we just have to define which is which for each of the requirement here. So sa number of values below x, yung x natin is 6. So as you can see, the number of values below x, below 6, is just 1, 2, 3. So therefore, that's gonna be 3 there. Plus 0.5 divided by the total number of values, which is 10, times 100% would be just 3.5 divided by 10 times 100%, wherein 3.5 divided by 10 is just 0.35 times 100% is just basically 35%. This means that our value of 6 is actually in the 35th percentile in this specific data set. And then if it's gonna talk about or it's gonna refer to test scores, that means na yung nakuha mong score na 6 is actually um, the 35th percentile, and that also means that you did better than 35% of the test takers. Okay? And then also, I'll let you use this formula as well na C is equal to N times P divided by 100, where N is the total number of values and P is equal to the percentile in finding the value corresponding to that percentile rank. But again, you have to do step 1 as well, just like what you did kanina. You have to arrange it in a rank list, or basically arrange it from lowest to highest or either highest to lowest before you apply these formula. So if we are going to do this, an example wherein we have to find the 25th percentile, what you're going to do is just substitute the values dito sa C is equal to N times P times 100. So N here is the total number of values, which is 10, times percentile rank, which is 25, divided by 100 is going to be 250 divided by 100. So that is just equal to 2.5. So 2.5, but again, it's not yet our 25th percentile or the value in the 25th percentile, because this is itong C is going to be used for you to locate the value that is equivalent for our 25th percentile. So basically, you are going to use this to locate yung value na yon. But also, before you use that, there is also a rule wherein kung yung C mo is not a whole number, you have to round it up to the next whole number and start counting from the lowest value. And then if it's a whole number, if your C is a whole number, you use the halfway between the CTH and the C phosphorus values when counting up from the lowest value. So let's try to determine if it's a whole number or not. So as you can see, it's not a whole number, so we are going to round up the value to 3, and then that's going to be our C. Now we count from the lowest value, which is 2. So this is going to be number 1, this is going to be number 2, and this is going to be number 3. So therefore, yung ating value for P sub 25 or our 25th percentile should be 5, not 3. Okay? That's how you make use of our C. Tapos, also, referring to the other rule wherein pag siya ay isang whole number, or yung C natin is a whole number, you are going to use you are going to find the halfway between our CTH and C plus first. So let's say, for a scenario, yung ating naging value dito ay hindi naging 2.5, but instead naging 3 siya. So, meaning, yung ating CTH there is gonna be 3. Tapos, yung C plus first natin would be our 4th value. So, as you can see here, you are going to calculate yung halfway between ng ika-third at 4th na value, which are 5 and 6. So, for this case, yung ating P is gonna be equal to 5.5, kasi that is the value halfway between 5 and 6. Okay? That is a certain scenario wherein hindi magiging magiging whole number. But if it's not a whole number, you just have to round it off. Okay? And start counting from the lowest value. And then also, we did talk about quartiles. Yung quartiles naman is dividing the distribution into 4 equal parts. But it's easy for quartiles because you have just to make use of the concept of the median. So we know that sa median, if you have a rank list, if it's an odd set of numbers, you just have to identify the middle score. And then if it's gonna be an even set of numbers, you just have to take the 2 middle numbers and then identify its mean. That would be the median. So basically, we are going to apply the same case with our quartiles. So for me to properly discuss this one, yung all about quartiles, let's use a number line. Let's say ito yung ating distribution of scores, right? Tapos, this is going to be 100%. And we wanted to divide this entire distribution into 4 equal parts. So, the best way to do that is basically just divide yung ating whole distribution first into two equal parts. So basically, dividing the entire distribution into two equal parts, magkakaroon ka ng median, which is actually our Q sub 2 here. Yung Q sub 2 is the middle quarter or quartile or just equal to your median. And then, from this value to our median, yung lowest, which is practically our lowest value if you arrange it from lowest to highest, and then to our median, which is Q sub 2, we are going to find naman yung ating median dyan. Tapos yung median dyan is gonna be called as our quartile 1. Okay? Or our first quartile. Now, also we want to divide this portion right here to the highest value. If we do that, we are going to find its median. So basically, that would be our Q sub 3 or our upper quartile. Now, if you look at our distribution, the value from our lowest value to Q sub 1, and then from Q sub 1 to Q sub 2, and then from Q sub 2 to Q sub 3, and then from Q sub 3 to Q sub 4 is just 25% each nung ating entire distribution, which is 100%. So basically, ganyan yung concept ni quartiles. Hindi ibig sabihin na you are dividing the entire distribution into 4 equal parts is that you have to have apat na quartile. What you meant there is you are dividing the entire distribution of scores into 4 equal parts just basically by determining yung mga median nila, which is our quartiles here. Okay? And then, of course, we try to apply that into an example, which is this one, wherein we try to calculate the quartiles or identify the quartiles of these data set wherein this is the data set in terms of calories per 100 milliliters of selected sodas. And then, of course, step 1 is still you have to rank the data. So we rank it from 1 to 25. We arrange it from lowest to highest. And then, to identify yung kanyang quartiles, we are going to start off with our Q sub 2. So basically, to determine our Q sub 2, you are going to find out ano yung value ano yung value ng middle number ng ating dataset. So, as you can see here, yung number of values natin is gonna be 25. So, yung middle number dyan is 13 because it's, you just have to identify the middle number because it's an odd set of numbers, which is 13. And the equivalent value under 13th position is 43. So, therefore, that is gonna be our median. Tapos, yung Q sub 1 dyan is gonna be the middle number from 1 to 12. And then 12 is an even set of numbers. So, therefore, we are going to consider the two middle numbers, which are, for this case, are 6th and the 7th position. So, you take out the mean from those values. 39 plus 39 divided by 2 is going to be 39. So, therefore, our first quartile is 39. And then, to identify our Q sub 3, you do the same case. So, basically, you are going to find the middle number from 14 to 25. And since this is an even set of numbers, of course, you have to identify the two middle numbers, which are 50 and 53. Now, 50 plus 53 ka divided by 2, that is just 51.5. So, therefore, our Q sub 3 is 51.5. So, ganun lang kadali i-identify yung Q sub 1, Q sub 2, tsaka Q sub 3 ng isang dataset. Okay? And then also, we try to do a graphical presentation of our quartiles. And of course, we have to make use of our 5 descriptive measures that we could have, which are our smallest, our Q sub 1, our median, and our Q sub 3, which is our upper quartile, tapos yung largest value. So basically, if I'm going to create that one, which is what you call a box plot or a box and whisker diagram, I am going to make use of this example ng ating ito. Let me just add another page. So what you're going to do is that for step 1, you are going to identify the descriptive measures that you are going to use in order to create our box plot or box whisker diagram. So that is our smallest value, which is for this case that is 26, and then our highest value, which is gonna be our 73. Tapos yung Q sub 2 natin, which is actually 43. And then our Q sub 1, which is 39. And then your Q sub 3, which is 51.5. Tapos yung step 2 naman is basically creating now our box and whisker plot. So yung gagawin mo first is create a number line. So this is or draw a number line, I mean. Tapos, yung gagawin mo, if you wanna determine ano yung range or intervals that you would create doon sa ating number line, you will look at our data set. So, if you can observe, our data set starts with 26, tapos it ends with 73. So, what you're going to do is, basically, you could start off by having intervals na tag 5. So, it would be now 20 to 25, 25 to 30, 30 to 35, until makover up yung pinaka-last data, which is 73. So, that would be now 20, 25, 30. Let's do a larger interval. So, that would be 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70. Tapos extend ko lang to, the portion right here. 70, 75. So, ganyan. Let's say, ganito yung na-create mong intervals. And then, of course, you will make use of this as a reference to determine saan nakalocate yung ating mga values here. So, if you look at Q sub 2, that is 43. So, yung 43 natin is halfway in between our 40 and 45. So, you take note of that, no? Dito tayo. And then, we move on to the next one, which is 39. Yung 39 is near to our 40. So, basically, it's kind of right here. And then, yung ating Q sub 3 is a little bit further away with 50. So, it's gonna be 51.5 here. And then, from then on, you create a box. So, we are going to start creating a box out of this reference. Oops. Okay. Yan. And then, if you create a box, you would now, you would now determine the median. So, ganon. Wait lang. Yan. You create a box, tapos determine mo yung median. So, basically, ito yung sinasabing box nun sa box and whisker diagram. Okay, wait. Yan. Kasi ganyan. Yan. Anyways, yan. Tapos, saan naman yung whisker? Yung whisker natin is the distance from your smallest value to quartile 1, and then the distance from your highest value to quartile 3. So, basically, you would determine also kung saan yung ating smallest value. So, yung smallest value is kinda right here, further away, a little bit further away from your value, which is 25. Tapos, you also determine yung pinaka-highest value, which is 73. So, it's halfway in between yung ating 70 to 75. You connect that. You connect those values. Or connect those points, I mean. Tapos, gawa ka ng whisker niya. Yan. So, as you can see, this is now your box and whisker plot out of your data set. Tapos, may use to class. Yung use nito is, one use of this one is to determine kung ano yung, kung symmetric ba or skewed or anong type of skewness meron yung ating data set or yung distribution. So, as you can see here, yung ating median is uh, papunta siyang left. So, meaning, that means nga yung ating distribution of scores is positively skewed. Once this median is exactly at the center of this box, then it's gonna be na symmetric yung ating distribution of scores. But if it's near sa right, then it's gonna be now negatively skewed. Okay? Yung distribution of scores. So, let me write that down. So, it's if it is if the median is exactly in between the box, then the distribution is symmetric. If near to the right, then it is negatively skewed. If near to the left, then it is positively skewed. Yan. Also, we have a use also nitong ating mga whiskers. So, also, it would determine kung symmetric siya or what type of skewness it has. So, as you can see, shorter yung ating line dito sa ating left. So, meaning, positively skewed yung ating distribution. Pag shorter naman, dito sa ating right, meaning it's negatively skewed. Okay? Yun. Yun yung interpretation ng ating box and whisker plot. So, yun. And moving on, aside from determining our quartiles and then making use of our quartiles to determine yung if symmetric ba siya or negatively or positively skewed, we can also make use of the quartiles to identify outliers. So this is a procedure for identifying outliers. Number one is you have to arrange the data in order and find Q sub 1 and Q sub 3. That's step 1. Step 2 is to find the interquartile range. Find the interquartile range, which is equal to you are going to make use of the formula IQR is equal to Q sub 3 minus Q sub 1. Tapos step 3 is multiply the IQR by 1.5. Step 4 is subtract the value obtained in step 3 from Q sub 1 and add naman the value to Q sub 3. Tapos step 5 is check the data set for any any data value that is smaller than q sub 1 minus 1.5 times IQR, which is what we did dito sa first, sa step 4, or larger than q sub 3 plus 1.5 times IQR. So, if we want to apply these steps, I like it to have an example para mas maganda yung pagka-explain niya, and then apply those steps. So, let's say may data set ka nga 5, 6, 12, 13, 15, 18, 22, 50. Tapos, as you can see, by inspection, you could easily determine na meron siyang extreme value. But you want to make sure that meron talaga siyang outlier. So, basically, yung extreme value wherein masyadong malayo itong value na to, or masyadong malayo talaga siya sa other values. That is an extreme value. Too small or too large na value. And then, if you wanna apply the steps, you do step 1, which is find q sub 1 and q sub 3. So basically, what you're going to do is just the same thing as what you did in quartiles, wherein determine if this is gonna be an odd or even set of numbers to find the median. So as you can see, the middle number here is 13 and 15. So basically, yung q sub 2 mo is 13 plus 15 divided by 2, which is gonna be 14. Tapos, pag q sub 1 mo naman is in terms of our values here. So, yung middle number there is gonna be 6 and 12. So, it's gonna be 6 plus 12 divided by 2, which is gonna give you 9. And then, for your q sub 3, that is basically dividing 18 plus 22 divided by 2, which is gonna be 20. So, yan yung ating mga quartiles. Now, you have to identify for step 1, which is find your q sub 1 and q sub 3. Now, you just have to move on to step 3. So, let me just add another page. So, sa step 3, that is gonna be IQR is equal to q sub 3 minus q sub 1, which is yung q sub 3 na nakalculate mo is 20 minus 9, which is your q sub 1, which would give you 11. And then you move on to step 4. So basically, for step 4, you just have to determine yung ating value. Once you subtract the value obtained in the IQR by, for step 3, we have to multiply pa pala ito ng step 2, or supposedly step 2 to. That was 3. So, pag step 3 pala, we have to multiply the IQR by 1.5. So, IQR by times 1.5. So, IQR times 1.5 is going to be 11 times 1.5, which is going to be giving you 16.5. Tapos, we move on now to step 4. Pag step 4, you just have to add and subtract. So, subtract muna the value obtained here in step 3 with q sub 1, tapos add mo siya ng value to q sub 3. So, basically, if you have 16.5, that would be 16.5 minus 9. Minus 9, which would give you 7.5. Tapos, 16.5 plus 20, which is the value of your q sub 3, no? Q sub 3 here. And then, that will be equal to 36.5. Now, you move on to step 5, which is gonna be determining kung yung merong data value that is smaller than your q sub 1 minus 1.5 times IQR, which you calculated here, and larger than our q sub 3 plus 1.5 times IQR, which you also calculated here, which are these values. So as you can see, if you look at the data set, no, na ating 5, 6, 12, 13, 15, 18, 22, tsaka 50, meron talagang larger than our Q sub 3 plus 1.5 uh, times IQR. Kasi up until 36.5 lang to. So meaning 50 is outside our interval. So there is really an outlier. So that's how you determine if there is gonna be an outlier for your data set. So I'm just going to cut off muna yung video baka kasi hindi ma-save, and then I'm just going to continue on part 2. Okay?